Is Balerion the Black Dread as big or even bigger than the dragons of Middle-earth? Well, this question is one to ponder about. We do know that Balerion and Vhagar are very big and the biggest to be seen in the Game of Thrones universe. But how do we compare them as well as Drogon with the ones from Tolkien's fantasy world Middle-earth? So let's get to it. Let's start with the Targaryen dragon's origins. There are quite a few origin stories, with the most common being that the ancient people called the Valerians discovered their eggs in a volcanic region called the 14 Fires. But there is another theory that these fire-breathing monsters were hybrids of wyverns and fireworms that were mixed together using blood magic. So these dragons have 4 limbs, with the front ones that have developed into wings. They have serpentine body shape, with a long neck, long tail and a bulbous torso. They are scaly, they have horns, rows of sharp teeth and can breathe fire. Now the origins of the Middle-earth dragons. These dragons were long-lived, powerful and cunning creatures possessing high levels of intelligence, great physical strength and covered nearly in impenetrable scales. They were bred by Morgoth, the original Dark Lord, and they were made by him because he needed powerful soldiers to fight the angelic Valar. The first one was Glaurung and was a fire-breathing wingless monstrosity. Then later he bred dragons that had wings and were a blight to all the free peoples of Middle-earth. But there were also dragons and drakes that could not breathe fire in that world. Let's start with the size estimate for Balerion. There is no doubt the biggest dragon from that world of Game of Thrones was him. He was brought to the western continent, Westeros, by a Valerian called Aegon Targaryen. This dragon lived to be over 200 years old and died of old age, but he never stopped growing till he died. His wingspan was so large that his shadow could engulf entire towns when he passed overhead. His jaws were large enough to swallow an elephant whole. So by looking at the skull of this behemoth beneath the Iron Throne in the series, we can clearly see that it is over 10 feet in height, and that puts the skull alone at around 20 to 25 feet long. That would put his overall length in the range of 330 to 400 feet long, or 100 to 120 meters long. Next, the size estimate for Vhagar. Now we are going to see Vhagar in the show House of the Dragon, and by the time of the Dance of the Dragons, she was a hardened survivor of 100 battles and had grown almost as large as Balerion, and was the oldest and largest of the dragons in Westeros at that point of time. Her skull was found beneath the Red Keep where the Iron Throne lies. Her skull was huge. The jaw could swallow an entire horse easily, and as we can see, the skull would have been 8 to 9 feet in height, so putting its length at 16 to 20 feet long, just the skull. Therefore, with the same body proportions similar to Balerion, she would have been around 250 to 300 feet long, around 75 to 90 meters. The size estimate for Drogon. Now we come to the most famous of the Westerosi dragons and the biggest living specimen in the series Game of Thrones. We have already done a size estimate for Drogon, and he would have had a skull length of around 2 meters or more than 6 feet, and therefore have an overall body length of close to 100 to 120 feet or 30 to 36 meters. Drogon grew at a very fast rate, I mean like fast forward into 4 kind of deal. In the first and second seasons, he was the size of a house cat, then by the later seasons we see him get an overdrive in growth. Now we come to Middle-earth, the size estimate for Smaug. The villain of The Hobbit, Smaug, was the last real fire drake or dragon. Although he was little compared to his ancestors, he was still really dreadful and responsible for the death and exile of the dwarves from Erebor, the Lonely Mountain. Smaug is described as being roughly 18 meters or 59 feet long in Karen Wynn Fonstad's The Atlas of Middle-earth, although this is more of an extreme underestimation. Smaug is described in other more reliable accounts as being 130 meters or 427 feet long, which is longer than 2 jumbo jets, and more or less accurate if we look at his appearance in Lake Town in the third movie of the trilogy, The Hobbit, towering over 3 to 4 storied houses that were burning. Now the size estimation for Glaurung. He was the first fire-breathing terrestrial dragon and referred to as the father of dragons. Tolkien said that Glaurung was quadrupedal. He was a reptile without wings and resembled a Chinese dragon or sauropods. He was a dreaded monster that laid waste to an entire elven army, so even at his smallest estimate he would have been at least bigger than Smaug for this to happen. Given to the fact that a man, Turin, slew him with a sword thrust to his heart, it would have been safe to say that he wasn't that bigger than Smaug, which was also killed by a black arrow of the same size as a sword. So Glaurung probably would be more than 150 meters or 500 feet, since it was described that his tail was very long. And lastly, the size estimate for Ancalagon. Now we come to the biggest and the most powerful dragon that was bred by Morgoth during the early ages of Middle-earth. He was as big as mountains, and as this excerpt from the Silmarillion explains, before the rising of the sun, Erindil slew Ancalagon the Black, the mightiest of the dragon hosts, and cast him from the sky, and he fell upon the towers of Thangorodrim, and they were broken in his ruin. So these towers were volcanic mountains, and therefore that would put Ancalagon at least in the kilometer or mile range of size. So let's have a comparison and a conclusion. The smallest was Drogon with a size estimate of 30 to 36 meters or 100 to 120 feet long. Then Vhagar, which is 75 to 90 meters or 250 to 300 feet long. Then Balerion at 100 to 120 meters or 330 to 400 feet. Then comes Smaug from Middle-earth, which is estimated to be over 130 meters or 427 feet, around the same size as Balerion. And then comes Glaurung, which would be a little bigger than both of them, both Smaug and Balerion, although being the only one here without wings. And then comes Ancalagon the Black lastly, which is just a black titan which is in the kilometer range in size. So that's it. I hope you have enjoyed watching this video. Do hit that like button for support and subscribe, but most of all smash that bell icon for regular updates on new videos right here on this channel. Till the next one, take care fam.